Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics AFL Fantasy 2025 video. It's still 2024. It's the 16th of October on Wednesday night when we're recording it. But we're recording this for AFL Fantasy 2025 because the trade period has just concluded. And we had the better part of, 2 weeks essentially of nothing. And then the last 20 minutes of the trade period, everything happened. So a bit of a domino effect there. But we got plenty of trades to talk through and what their AFL fantasy implications are for potentially our starting teams next year. But I'm your host, Bails, and you can find me at BailsDT across the socials. And joining me is my fellow co-host and AFL fantasy fanatic. It is Jordox. Jordox, mate, how's the last few weeks been of no fantasy and how you going?
Yeah, going well, mate. It's been a minute since we caught up, and it's been, I suppose, a couple of months since the men's fantasy season wrapped up. So yeah, had a bit of a break, and it doesn't take much to get me back into it. And this trade period is as long and drawn out as it was, has resulted in lots of content and conversations for the fantasy nutbags amongst us, present company included.
Exactly right. And if you're like me, and we're already playing their team sort of with the last few weeks of the season to go when I knew I couldn't get a hat, this is sort of exciting because I've already been looking at a few of these things, and a few of these trades are going to be very fantasy relevant, particularly in the forward line, which we didn't have many options going into. The sort of next year we're looking at going, who's going to be the forwards? Like Bailey Smith's about the only one, then that's about it. But we've actually got a fair few options that we can chat about now. So we'll go through the trades. We're actually going to go in order of when they were done. So we'll go from the free agents first, and then we'll go through all the trades and stuff, and we'll go through all the way up until the most relevant ones, which will probably be at the very end because they're all done today. Alrighty, so let's get stuck into the first trade that was done in the trade period, which wasn't the most exciting one, but it is Elliot Himmelberg, who is on his way from the Crows over to the Gold Coast Suns. I think Joel Swinger both agree that's not going to be fantasy relevant in 2025. So we'll move to the next one.
Yeah, nice and easy.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are watching on the video version of it as well, Jordan's connection gets a little bit fuzzy at times, but his internet, as he said, went out yesterday, been playing up. So hopefully it is all good, and hopefully the information that we're talking to you will be useful. But okay, so next one is Josh Battle, obviously making his way over from St Kilda to Hawthorn. He's not going to be fantasy relevant, but he makes someone else fantasy relevant, along with a player that we'll chat, obviously, that is coming up after, and Tom Barrass, who also is on his way to Hawthorn. So in saying that, we'll quickly chat about James Sicily, because he had a bit of a down year, obviously, this year, with a few injuries. He was really the second tall, along with Sam Frost. Played the 20 games this year, averaged 87.4, so he'll be priced at that 87.4. And this guy was the second highest averaging defender 2 years ago behind Nick Dacos. So Jordox is with Barrass and Battle now there. Is there a bit more interest for you for James Sicily being that guy we saw probably a couple of years ago, that third tall intercepting defender that put up those massive scores?
Yeah, certainly the thought of Sicily being freed up is going to have everyone's ears pricked, because we know what he can do in that role. I suppose my mindset on it, and we've got the whole spring and summer ahead of us before we even have to make a decision, but I don't know. I just wonder, Hawks have got, is it Mitch Lewis out long term? I just wonder if they experiment with Sicily forward again. It's just something that frightens me anytime I consider a Sicily move. And with Battle and Barrass coming in to shore up that back end, I don't know if they have a look at Sicily as a forward. It's obviously no go. If Sicily's freed up to do as he pleases and lead, as the captain from marshalling the troops from the back line, then yeah, the Sicily pick is on for sure.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good flag. I'm still thinking with Kaush Nadir, with Mabior Chol, and even a Jack Gunston still there. I think I've got a few forward options that hopefully means he plays in defence. But again, that's a good preseason watch, and maybe he's not like price at 87. We know that he can go well over 105 in that role. We saw a couple of years ago. So even if we start with him, see how he goes. If he does get thrown forward a few times, then we could look at maybe trading him out. But definitely a strong player.
I don't think it'd be a surprise. I think it'd be he trains with the forwards in the summer. We'd know about it, so it won't be a surprise.
Yeah, but I think in this, if he's playing defence, is he in your starting side? If you had to make one now, because he would be for me.
If I had to make one now, probably not. I never like starting Sicily. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That is fair enough. We'll move over to the third trade that was done, which was Harry Perryman, who, again, we thought for a long time was going to Port, but he's going from Giants to Collingwood. So I think this is potentially a fantasy relevant one because he's priced at 74, played 19 games last year. He's been, what we've heard is that he's going to be getting midfield opportunity. And I imagine that's why that would have been the appeal of leaving to get more opportunity at midfield. For a guy priced at 74, I know MJ was chatting about him, and he's averaged over 85 a few times, especially in this midfield role as well. He's going to be hype on the watch list for me. And again, if I had to make a team, he probably would be in it now. So, George, talk to me about Perryman and what you think he can do in 2025.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where the player landed would probably dictate my interest. I mean, it was Port Adelaide, I think, was originally thought to be his home, if I'm correct there. And, how he fits in their midfield with, they're so blessed with the young midfield they've got. But now that he's going to Collingwood, and it does sound like there may have been some, not assurances, but, talk of giving him some midfield time. I think he's what Collingwood needs. So, yeah, like you said, priced at 74, he could be your classic sort of new club, new role, and then, adds 15 to 20 points to his average. So, yeah, he's a huge watch. He's a very good player. Giants, I just don't think ever settled on a role. So, let's see what he does at the Pies, but he's on the watch list for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And he's one of those players that we talk about every year that if you can get that value, and again, new club, this is a trade period, opens up opportunity for a lot of these guys that could be underpriced and go to a new team and go really well. So Perryman is definitely a preseason watch for sure on the roll. Next on the list, as Cows love to say, dum-de-dum, Tom Campbell has made his way over to Melbourne. This is obviously nothing more than just a backup for Max Gawn because they didn't really have anything behind him if he got injured. I think Tom Fullerton was there, but then they had like a Verrill, I think his name was, like a young fella that they're obviously trying to sort of build up through the VFL. So Campbell's just a depth role, but Gorney, we imagine, will have that number one ruck role again in 2025. Moving over to the last sort of two of the sort of the free agents that made their moves before the actual trade period opened. So Nick Haynes has gone over to Carlton. So he'll be priced at an average of so he only played the 8 games, so 71.5 average last year. I don't know, Jordan, does that mean he's priced what he averaged in 2023 instead of what he averaged this year if you play less than 10 games?
I'm not sure what the exact number is, but if it does qualify for the discount, it's the high average of his previous 2 seasons. So you'd have to look at
what he averaged in 2023. Yeah, so he'll be priced on that. So actually, I probably should have got this up, but I'll quickly get Nick Haynes' average up from here using the DFS Australia website, which is the best out there and fantastic to you.
Oh, absolutely. Do you reckon he slots straight into the 22, Haynes, or is he there as backup? I'm not too sure what his role is going to be. Carlton fans, I'm sure, would know a lot more. He's been a great player at the Giants and flirted with fantasy relevance for a couple of seasons there, but for the most part, he's been a waiver wire guy in draft. So, look, if the role's there at Carlton and he's got that price, but I feel like he's a bit of an insurance type for the Blues because he's
I think the thing that was hard. I think the thing that was hard for Carlton was they had a lot of injuries last year in their defence, and I think they've let a couple go, and there's a spot there for him. But as you said, it's sort of one that we don't quite know yet. So in terms of his fantasy average from 22, it was 63.9. So I'm assuming to be applied to 7.5. He'll get the discount for only playing the 8 games. So just preseason watch. I don't think we're going to be selecting him, but it'll be interesting to see what that does for a guy like maybe Sam Doherty, who will be straight mid next year. And we'll see if he stays on a wing and what his price will be, because he'll obviously be discounted from missing the whole season. So that might be something to keep an eye on there. And the final one that we'll chat about is that makes both me and you very happy. And it's probably good that we're leaving him until the last of the free agents there. Is Isaac Cumming, who's joined from the Giants over to the Crows. I think that this is a potential very good pick for us in fantasy next year. He'll be a straight mid because he played mostly wing this year for the Giants. So he'll be a midfielder. He averaged to 61.3 points last year from just the 4 games, obviously, because a few injuries restricted him to only that many games, a few hamstring niggles and stuff like that. But in terms of his average from 2023, which we know that he was a prima a few years ago, but it's just been the last couple of years that Whitfield's gone back more there now. Lockie Ash is there as well. A few guys back there that have taken that role that pushed him up the ground. So in 2023, played the 20 games and he averaged the 67.8 points. So he'll be priced on that. Obviously, we get discounted on that. As a straight mid, could be very similar to like a Riley Bonner from obviously this year just gone. Is he an interest for you, Jordox, in 2025?
Oh, I'm very excited about Culling, but more as a Crows fan than anything. But no, in all seriousness, there is a really good opportunity here for him to be like a Riley Bonner, because he start with defender this year, or he was just mid Bonner and he picked it up? Or do you have
defender status. He's picked up defender status after.
Yeah. So if you could start coming at M5 possibly, and then have him roll into your back line after a few rounds, if that's where the Crows choose to play him. Now, his fantasy career was going well, and it really changed when Leon Cameron left. And my mind's gone blank. What's the Giants coach name?
Adam Kingsley.
Kingsley, yeah, the big guns. So once Kingsley came in, he got sort of moved from halfback more to a wing, and then through injuries and form kind of lost his spot and clearly lost his fantasy scoring. So if the Crows do choose to release him off halfback, he'll get the defender status, and I believe he'll get plenty of pill at the Crows. It's just about his body, but at that price, he'd just be a starting guy to make you some cash. And then, you'd probably move off him. But, yeah, definitely one to watch.
Agreed. So he averaged 90.6 in 2022, so his career best year. And the year before, they averaged 83.5. And in those 2 years, he actually played 24 games in 2021, and then 21 in 2022. He still played 20 games in 2023, which is this year was the first year that he struggled with injury. But I think Darren Burgess, pretty good head of performance sort of person to sort of get fit and everything. Obviously, travel around the world. So been at plenty of international teams and stuff like that. So I think that'll be good for Isaac Cumming, and hopefully he'll go well for the Crows, and could be definitely a preseason watch, because if he's a wing, probably not looking at it. I think it's a lot of value in the mids next year. But, definitely someone to be keeping an eye on, that's for sure. So they're the actual free. So we'll move to the trade period. And funny enough, we'll move from one Crow to another, which was the first deal done in the actual trade period, which was Alex Neil-Bullen making his way across from Melbourne over to the Crows. Played the 23 games last year, average of 79. He'll keep forward status. I think a very relevant draft one. This could be a good draft one that you might be able to bump up a little bit. I think there'll be a little bit more opportunity potentially at the Crows are there, or maybe the same at least. And if you're getting an 80 averaging forward, that's pretty good. But in terms of classic, is there any interest from you, Jordox, with this one, or is this one again probably more pre-season? You expect to play more forward, but probably just depend on how much he plays up the ground.
I reckon if you'd asked me the day he was traded, this was day one of the trade period, which feels like 2 months ago now. But I would have said, look, maybe. But with what's followed, especially with all the trades that got done today on deadline day, there's a heap of forward options now, I think. So someone priced at 79, in the latter stages of his career, unless there was talk of a pure mid role, which there's not going to be. I think you're right. It's probably more for draft.
Yeah, so he's got a career best average at 81.1. That was back in 2017. And he's had a couple in the 70s. Obviously, 79 was last year was actually his second best fantasy average in his career. So had a good year last year for Melbourne, but I agree. I think with all the forward additions, it's probably bumping him down sort of down the order slightly, but obviously good get for the Crows. And obviously draft will be will be very, very relevant there as well. Next one was Jack Darling, make his way over from West Coast to North Melbourne. Good for North Melbourne, getting another experienced forward to help out Nick Larkey there. But in terms of fantasy, I don't think he will be an option for us. But we will move over to someone that could be a smoky. One of the sort of the forwards that did get traded, which was Jack Graham, leaving Richmond across to West Coast. Played the 14 games last year, average of 64.5. I'm not sure if that prices him on that. I still am not quite that with what they're priced at, but we'll find that out soon enough. But if he's priced at 64.5, then going to West Coast potentially he'll get more in midfield opportunity. He's looked good in parts, Jordox, in his career in sort of spurts, but haven't really seen that consistency. His body's let him down, but also obviously Richmond have had a bit of depth there at the in the midfield. Is he someone that you'd be watching in the preseason?
Yeah, another guy whose fantasy career sort of stalled somewhat in the last few years for a number of reasons. Like you said, the depth at Richmond, particularly when they were the powerhouse. But I don't know, even the last couple of years with Richmond have been begging for someone like him, but it just hasn't worked. Anyway, off he goes to the Eagles. And yeah, I'd like to get an idea of what role he's going to have. But again, priced at 64, there's going to be a lot of these mid-price forwards that are going to tempt us. So it's really just about the preseason and who puts their hand up. But he's certainly one of them. He's got a fantasy game in him. He's not an accumulator, but he's a big tackler. So yeah, if he's at the coalface at West Coast next year, I'd expect a pretty big uptick in scoring.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that probably catches my eye was actually his 4 years from 2019 to 2022, where he went 78.4 in 2019, 58.9 in 2020. Obviously, adjust that a little bit more, obviously up, and that's upwards around the 75 mark. 78.5 in 2021 and 74 in 2022. And across those years, he played 16 games in 2019 and 2020, and then obviously 2021, 2022 is when he played 22 and 20 games respectively. So there is potential of 15 points upside there, but obviously we've got to see the role and where he's playing first. But yeah, definitely one to put on the watch list with a number of these forwards that were dealt during the trade period. Moving over to the next one, which that was actually, I believe that was the last one that we saw for a while. Jack Graham was the last one. We only had three, and as we know, it was so quiet for the better part of a week, and then all these deals got done today. So this is all, then yesterday and today.
There was nothing, and then there was a little pick swap Monday morning, and then a whole lot of nothing again, and then yesterday into today.
Yeah, so we'll start with yesterday with a few that got done here as well. So the duel of Matt Owies, who going to West Coast, not fancy relevant, but I think it's a good get for West Coast. I think Carlton ideally would have kept him, but obviously with all the money and stuff tied into players they've either currently got or like a Wiedering, Walsh, guys like that, they're going to get big contracts. But yeah, so always good get for West Coast, but not fantasy relevant. But Liam Baker could be one that is fantasy relevant for us next year, depending on role, because we know that he can be used everywhere. He can play forward, midfield, defense. So it'll be very interesting to see. But if he can get this midfield role, that'd be good. Played the 18 games last year for an average of 78.5, but in a forward line again, where there's a few options we're going to talk about here, but all of them are sort of got to see. If Liam Baker's got a midfield role, could be somewhat of interest. What are you thinking about Liam Baker for next year, Jordox, if he gets the right role?
Yeah, the role is crucial, more crucial for him than anyone. And look, in some ways, the Owies pickup could help with that. That they'd be more inclined to play him back. I want to see him off a half back, racking up for the Eagles. That's where I'd invested him at that price. But I'm not sure. 78. It's a better season than I thought. To be fair, I didn't realize he'd had.
You had a few big scores that helped with that. Like at the start in round 2 and 3 went 105, 113. He got a 112 against Geelong in round 12, where we thought he was done for the game. He did a hamstring like the first quarter, and we all thought he was done. But then he came back out and kept playing. So there's a few good scores, and we know that he can do it. And I think I was thinking midfield originally, but I think I agree with the half back role. I think Witherden, they clearly don't trust as the main distributor back there. Obviously, Barras is gone there as well. They're going to need
no news on Witherden yet. He may not even be there.
Still. Yeah, exactly. So I I think that there is that spot open up in defence that he could fill the void. Because in the midfield, you look at the midfields, Wasco's still got a fair few midfields. Like Jack Graham, we literally talk about, we think he's going to go in the midfield. You got Tim Kelly still there. Dom Sheedy, if he gets fit, you've got like a few options. Harley Reid, obviously, will be commanding a lot of that midfield time. Yeah, not too bad. He might be talking about in the trade period over the next sort of 12 to 24 months in terms of what he'll be doing. But yeah, there's like a few names that can roll through there. And Liam Duggan sort of goes between sort of both midfield and defence. So maybe they might do like a 50-50 swap. You got Elliot Yeo as well. You're probably wondering why I was saying like maybe the better names later. I literally just almost forgot about every player besides the ones we're talking about today. I had to try and remember who played midfield for West Coast. And so it's all coming back. But yeah, so it'll be very interesting for the role. It might be, again, one where he swaps between midfield and defence. But yeah, definitely pre-season watch and one to put on the watch list. Now we have the mega trade of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players. So we'll smash out the ones that probably aren't relevant. The one that probably we're both going to, it's just very confusing. Rory Atkins, Port Adelaide. It's going to be very weird if he does play games for Port after he was a Crow. But again, he's got a fantasy game ban. I don't know if he's going to be in Port's best 22. But we know that he had a pretty good year the year before. There is a tiny bit of relevance there if he was to get a game, but we'd need to see him in the team first. So just we'll park him for now. But if he does play, could be someone that you look at. Joe Richards, good young player. I think he's a good get for Port. Young player for the future there. Joe Richards, obviously rookie from this year. Not going to be fantasy relevant for us next year, but he's been a good player. Maybe one you stash on a dynasty team or a keeper team or something like that in draft potentially. Then you've got Jack Lukosius going to Port Adelaide as well. Don't think fantasy relevant. He's going to be playing, I believe, probably, I don't even know what role he's going to play. Can you play forward? Can you play defense? Can you play wing? I don't know. So I think might be able to.
Yeah, I think if he'd chosen Adelaide, it would have been more of a wing half-back role, which would have very much been intriguing for fantasy. But because he's gone to Port, and I believe part of his decision was, that there's a forward role for him. So I think he sees himself as a forward. And then, look, I think down the track he could be fantasy relevant, but not at this stage at a forward. I'd need to see him getting up the ground, like think like a Nick Revolt type. I know he's not quite the same, but up the ground, lots of touches, maybe like a Jeremy Cameron type. I could see that down the track, but not yet, and not next year.
Yeah, exactly right. Then you got John Noble as well, who is making his way over to Gold Coast. Draft potentially could be relevant. I think with another player that went to Gold Coast there as well, it's going to be really hard to see who's I'd imagine that he'll be the 1B back there of the guys using the ball out of the defence. Played 20 games last year for average of 74.4. Again, he's a bit of a smoky watch. Draft, I think, more relevant. I think he could push his average up and it might be one to watch. But in terms of classic, I'm probably not as keen just yet. I want to see it first before I'm really keen. But the one player that we will talk about, he's interesting, but I believe he's probably still got 2 games to go on the suspension, if I'm not mistaken. Dan Houston obviously making his way over to Collingwood from Port, which is probably the big
I think
move,
he misses one round. So if the Pies play opening round, it won't impact. But if they don't, then he'll miss.
Yeah, cool. I couldn't remember if it was 1 or 2, but hey, if they play opening round, it's this. I think this could be potentially relevant. I don't know if I'd start with him because he's still getting priced at 94, still going to be a premium option for us. And we know Collingwood really haven't supported many fantasy players other than Nick Dacos, who's not too bad of a player. So he'd be a early season watch. I don't think he's a starter, but again, draft again. I think it's good that he goes there and he'll be the main distributor coming out of halfback. But yeah, Jorts, any sort of comment from you about Dan Houston and if there's sort of any interest from you in Classic for next year?
Yeah, I mean, everyone will talk about him. It's a big move. Probably one of the biggest players of the trade period is going to a big Melbourne club. And I don't know about starting him. I'd probably almost rather take the punt on Perryman for, whatever K cheaper it'll be. But I've heard a few things, nothing substantiated, just, on trade radio and whatnot, about they could look to use him the way they used Nick Dacos. So a bit off half back, a bit in the guts, maybe even floating a bit off half forward. So just to keep things interesting, for the opposition. So I can see him improving his average and becoming a 100 guy. But the one thing that's been a knock on him, because he's been pretty bloody good as a footy player, but also in fantasy for a few years. But the thing that lets him down is just every now and then he has these stinkers and it drops his average. The floor scores, yeah. So if he can improve on that and avoid the tags, he could end up being a top 6 defender for sure. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, like last year when he went over 100 points, he went 109 or more. So he went in his games, he went 109 against Freo, 119 against Collingwood, 136 against the Hawks, 133 against the Giants, 122 against Gold Coast, and then finished off the season with a 126 against Sydney and 115 against Melbourne. So he's got the ceiling, but as you mentioned, though, it's the floor scores. So he was on a good roll, but out of nowhere, scored a 47 against St Kilda, which is a great matchup, as we know, for defenders. Put that out as a bad score. 58 against the Bulldogs, who Bulldogs, again, have been a team that have given up points. So, and we've seen previous years as well where he's just put a dud score out of nowhere. So, again, that is a good point you raised. But, I will definitely
say, though, I think 2020, 2021, one of the years I had a really good year. I started him, and he was quite unique, and he scored 150 in round 1. So I was like off to the races. He was a unique, but it didn't last.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, definitely one to keep an eye on, but probably one that I think will be more of a potential upgrade target later in the year if he is the player that we think he might be able to get to at Collingwood. Next on the list is Harry Sharp, who made the way over from Brisbane over to Melbourne. So obviously didn't get too much opportunity at Brisbane last year, obviously in a very good team there. Played the 6 games, a few of them as sub, but he did score an 87 against Gold Coast in round 8, average of 45.7. So I'm not sure whereabouts his. I think he'll be priced around that, so I don't know what his price will be. But depending on how cheap he is, he's obviously gone to Melbourne because he thinks there's going to be opportunity there. So preseason watch, one to put on the potential black bookers to watch. But as a midfielder, going to be probably a bit of an awkward price when you've got rookies and then some underpriced primos. So one to put on the watch list, but not one I'm sort of as keen on just yet. Anything to add on Harry Sharp, Jordox, or?
No, I think you've covered it all there. We'll wait and see on Sharp.
Yeah, beautiful. We'll move on to the next one, which again was one of the other big moves made in the trade period, and that was Shea Bolton making his way over from Richmond over to Fremantle in a big deal there. So he'll retain his forward status, I would imagine, next year. Who he priced at 73.5 from his 22 games there. It's going to be, again, draft is a good one to take a punt on in drafts and watching preseason, but I struggle to see where he's going to get the fantasy relevance in terms of classic from just going to Freo. I think he's been playing a lot more forward just because they've got Brayshaw, they've got Sarong, like they've got all that, like there's 5 still around the place. Like there's a lot of guys in that midfield already. I just don't know how he's going to get in front of any of these players. Do you agree with that, Jordox?
Think of him. Yeah, no, not really. I think what he offers is quite different to what they've got, and that's this explosive burst of speed, and he's just such a dynamic player. I just think he's been a bit, I'm not going to say disgruntled or anything like that, but to really see him hit running and playing, I can really see him hitting the ground running back in his home state and playing, the way we saw Rankin play this year in a bit of forward, bit of mid. I'm quite bullish on Bolton for fantasy. I think he's going to be really cheap, and I think he could make some money early.
Yeah, well, I think it just comes down to the role. That's probably why I'm not as keen on, just because I don't know how much midfield time he's going to get, and I just don't know if he's going to get as much. But as you say, he's back home. There was a stat today about his last sort of 6-7 games he's played at Optus, and he's kicked multiple goals and had 15 plus something in every game. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. Preseason watch as well, but one I'm probably not as keen on, I guess, as obviously what you are, and maybe a few others might be, just because I like a few of these other forwards we got. But one I'll be putting down on my list nonetheless. And I think it's a great get for Freo. In terms of the actual team, it's a fantastic get. And they're going to be, with the business that they've done, I think that they could be right up there this year and make that top 8. We'll move across to potential smoky that could be relevant in Dan Rioli, obviously make his way from Richmond to Gold Coast. Average of 83.5 from his 23 games last year, but he's moving to a team that didn't score very many fantasy points, even in their premiership winning years, to a team that we've seen people at Gold Coast, especially in defensive half, score quite well. And they have paid a fair bit for him. They've obviously gone back up there. Obviously, Damien Hardwick knows him. Obviously, at the time at Richmond. I think this could be a smoky one that we got to keep an eye on. Finished the year with 135, 82, and a 123. And at 123 was against Gold Coast. So we know he's got the ceiling. Just depends if he can just elevate that up to the level. But and price at 83.5, there could be some improvement there into the 90s there, Jordox. So are you keen on Dan Rioli and watching him in pre-season?
Yeah. I mean, he's come across to reunite with Dimmo, who, when Hardwick got to Gold Coast, he looked at Buderick, he looked at Weller, he looked at a bunch of these guys, Will Powell, and thought, one of these guys could play that Jaden Short type role that he had at Richmond, which, to be fair, was probably one of the fantasy relevant guys in that role, Jaden Short, across the Richmond's dominant years. So for Rioli to get back with Dimmer, I think Dimmer's going to slot him straight into that role as the main distributor. And he takes the game on, gets 1-2s. He had some whopping games to finish off this year. Starting price is a bit awkward, but I think he's a really, really good chance to improve at a new club.
Yeah, again, definitely great for draft. Bump him up the order, I think. I think he'd be better than that 83.5 average and push that 90 mark, and one to watch in the preseason for Classic. But it's that. If he's priced in the 70s, great. If before those last 3 games, he probably would have been a bit more even, probably averaged about like an extra 5 odd points onto his price for next year. So definitely one to keep an eye on. Another Crow that made their move across, James Peatling, making his way over from AWST to the Crows. Again, I'm very excited with this as a Crows fan. It's probably the first time in a long time that a player that's not been South Australian has then chosen the Crows to move over. So I'm quite bullish on that. Fantasy-wise, though, I'm not as sure because he's priced cheap, 61.8. So he'll be cheap because he played the 17 games and he was sub, obviously, a few times. So there is that inbuilt value already into his price. He's going to be a straight mid, though, because he played so much mid in the back part of the year that he won't be a forward. If he's a forward, I'd be all over this. It'd be almost probably a lock in our teams. But I think it's very much a preseason watch. Midfield, I'm sure we'll chat about during the preseason. There's so many midfielders priced in the 90s and the 80s and even a few in the 70s that are going to be really, really cheap for us that we're going to be probably putting a few of those in. And then we talk about Isaac Cumming, who's around might be around the same price that if he's got a half back roll, that might be more better for fantasy. So I'm not sure. But Jordox, what are your thoughts with Peatling heading into next year as a fantasy options? Again, draft, good. Bump up the order. I think that he'll be priced at 61.8, so people might sort of miss him when they're flicking through him. In terms of Classic, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I reckon it'd take a brave coach to start him. But in the games that he wasn't sub or at least was on the ground for more than 50%, he averaged 83.5 last year. So that's 20 points on his priced average. So if the Crows give him that role and he plays every week and he isn't the sub, he's going to put at least 2 points on his average, I believe. So yes, it would be a brave person to do it, and it's in an awkward spot in the midfield. You'd much rather see him with the forward status. But I just think it's all the more brave and unique to Steam. So again, it'd be M5, M6, something like that. I could see him getting up to an 80 plus average easy.
Yeah. I can envision a world where we do start with him and he has a good preseason, puts himself on the radar and we start him. But again, it's a preseason watch for me. It's just going to be awkward as a pure mid, a lot of options to consider. So just depend if he can be one of those best options. So someone to watch. But yeah, could be a better get for the Crows than what it would be for us in fantasy. So we'll have to wait and see on Peatling. And now we'll get to a lot of relevant ones here as well. So the Tom Barrass one, obviously not as relevant for fantasy-wise. Obviously, we mentioned before, obviously made the move from West Coast over to Hawthorn. Great for Hawthorn. Fast tracks a rebuild, but also makes Sicily potentially a really good option for us, which we discussed before. But pretty much most of these other guys are going to be quite relevant for us. So we'll start off with Caleb Daniel making the move over to North Melbourne from the Bulldogs. Again, sub multiple times last year and didn't have a great average, only averaged a 50.1 from 15 games. I think he'll be priced on the 50. I think he's priced because he played the 15 games, so I think he'll be priced at that. 50.1. I heard on Trade Radio as well. They were chatting to like his management team and everything like that, and apparently he's already chatted with Clarko, and it's looking like they're saying the halfback role is going to be there, and also Brady Rawlings as well also came out and said that about McKercher with getting the addition of Caleb Daniel might mean McKercher's pushed up the ground. So that's probably a bit of an X almost asterisk next to McKercher's name already, that maybe we thought he could be an option that might improve his average, and obviously with a few injuries and whatever last year, but probably not as keenly now he's up the ground. But Caleb Daniel, half-back role, if he's playing that, he's going to be a forward next year, price really cheap. If he's playing half-back role and I see it in pre-season, I'm all over this pick as a forward. So, Jordox, have you got similar thoughts?
Oh, I think even though it's October, it's probably a bit early to call it a lockety-lock, but I'd be locking that in. He'll be dirt cheap, he'll be a forward, and he's going to be playing off half-back. Let's think of some of the names that have had that role in the last 4 or 5 years. Luke McDonald was good for a bit. Aaron Hall was good. Zeeble was great. Sheasel's been amazing. Zach Fisher. Look, it's a spot where fantasy points blossom, and Caleb Daniel's very good. So, yeah, I don't think there's much more that needs to be said. If he's fitting in round one, he's in, I think, most squads.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing, again, that makes this attractive is the fact that it's the price. He's going to be priced at 50. Like, I'm just looking here at his averages at the Bulldogs. Like, obviously, the last couple of years haven't been great. Well, sorry, just this year wasn't great. But, like, before that, 2023 averaged 90, 2022, 87.2, 2021, he averaged 87.3. During 2020, obviously averaged 72.2. That's a better part of around the 85-90 mark. Then a 93.8 average in 2019, which was his best average there. So he's averaged over 75 in every season since 2016, except for this year, obviously, where he fell out of favour. So I think there's potentially 30, 40 points of upside here. I think that he is, yeah, as you say, if this role, from what we've heard, is going to stick, I think we can pretty much lock him in. So very good option there. Another couple of North players here as well. So Jacob Costanti, just one to keep an eye on, rookie. I think he'll be 200 basement price for us next year, 200K. Didn't play a game for Sydney, makes a move over as a smaller forward. Again, just we'll see with the draft and where these rookies fall and if he gets a game, but one to put on the watch list to potentially put in on your bench in your classic sides there. But one that's very relevant again, Luke Parker, making the move over from Sydney to North Melbourne. Played just the 7 games last year for an average of 65.9. We know for a fact that he played a lot of those games mostly as a forward. I believe there was a game actually where he came on as sub and he scored, where was it here? I'm just getting it up.
It was against North. He scored 72 in North. 38% game time.
Yeah, 38. Ridiculous. So very, very good. And even against the Bulldogs in 58%, he scored the 71. So, yeah, so I was trying to find it, but North was at the very top. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. We know what he can do when he's playing in the midfield there. I don't know why my phone has got Luke Parks up on my phone. I'm looking for Luke Parker, not Luke Parks. Thank you very much. Just getting up his stats in terms of what his average, his best averages. But we obviously know he's been a very, very, very relevant fantasy player and as a forward as well. So he's, again, career best average of 107 in 2016. He averaged 103.2 in 2014 as well. But even after that, in every year, since then, he's averaged over 90. That's even including the code year where he went 84, but that's obviously 100 average in that year. So, yeah, a lot of big scores and 90 averages. He would have made the move over to North Melbourne. I think he's going to be playing midfield. He's not moving over there just to be a forward. Otherwise, he would have stayed at Sydney with that. So I think being priced at, so he'll be priced at 90.4. He'll get the discount. He'll be priced around the 80 mark, but I think this is again, you're not going to be priced as cheap as what we want, but I think it's a pretty good pick nonetheless in the forward line. Jordox, what are your thoughts?
What did you say he'd be priced at?
Because he only played the sort of the 10 games this year, including finals. So he'll be priced on what his 2023 average was, not what his average was last year. So he'll be priced at 90.4. Put the discount on there, and we'll see what the discount is, which is a shame because obviously if he was priced around the 60 mark, it'd be a lot. But it'd be priced about I would imagine around the 80 odd mark there. But I still think this could be a good pick.
Yeah,
I think he could average 90.
Yeah, he could do. I don't know. I think he's going to North for leadership and experience, and I'm sure he could play most games. But in terms of him playing pure on ball, North have got a lot of good midfielders in there.
Yeah, I definitely don't mean he'll play.
If he was cheaper, yeah. But I don't know if he's priced around 80. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'll play full-time mid. I'm just thinking he'll do probably a 50-50 split between the two, and I think that's what potentially could. Again, preseason watch to see how he goes, but with all these forward options, again, it's he might be down the pecking order in terms of we've got a few others, like you'd rather Caleb Daniel over him in your starting team, and a few other options.
Who said there was a forward crisis? We are loving the forwards.
Exactly right.
There's still more to go through.
Exactly. And funny enough, you saying that, we'll move over to the most fantasy lock that before the season started, he'll be in 70-75% of teams that at least take it seriously. Bailey Smith will be locked in all our sides. Made the move over to Geelong, got done very late. But we knew about this was going to be happening like probably 12 months ago, 24 months ago even, that he was going to be going to Geelong. So obviously didn't play a game last year after doing his ACL in the preseason. But in terms of what he will be priced at, he'll be priced at his 2023 average. And again, it's got Bailey Scott up for some reason. I want Bailey Smith, thank you. Bailey Smith will be priced at his 2023 average, which was, where is it? Here we go. Which was 83.3, which is cheap. And he's then going to be 30% discount on that. And he'll be priced around that 70 mark, maybe a little bit less.
He was potentially going to be a bargain this year before, obviously he hurt his knee. I think with Smith, like you said, I think like you said, he's going to be one of the first picked. He's got the history of scoring, tick. The role's going to open up. There's a spot there at Geelong in the guts, tick. The price is going to be beautiful, tick. He's going to have forward eligibility, tick.
He's probably going to be on what you project. He's probably going to be F1. What we'd probably just imagine the role, the pedigree. We just think he'll probably be F1 straight up because we know that we're going to lose all the things because we're going to lose all the forwards that we had last year that were the high averaging ones that all played like all these midfield roles, or defensive roles. So like Dane Zorko is not going to. He'll be a defender next year. Flanders will be probably a defender mid next year. Then you've got like Heaney be a midfielder. Jai Caldwell be a midfielder. Like there's going to be all these guys are going to lose their status. Like Dylan Moore's the only one priced over 86 that's going to be still a forward. But again, do we really? We've got these other options that are cheap that we probably want to be starting in over Dylan Moore and saving a bit of cash. So yeah, definitely Bailey Smith is an absolute lock for our team. So really not much more we could really add with him. Jake Stringer making the move over from Essendon to GWS. I think it's a good get for GWS, makes their forward line even more dynamic. And again, could be another sort of, might go in for a CBA or two when they need a bit of a spark, which we've seen the Giants have done with Brent Daniels and Toby Green in the past. Jake String's another guy they can use for that. Not classic relevant. Again, draft, again, could be a solid enough pick as well, but classic, we're not going to be looking at him next year. But we will finish off with the final two trades, I believe, that were made. So the one that is, again, I think very relevant as well, is Jack McRae made the move over from the Bulldogs to St Kilda. played the 18 games last year, so he'll be priced at 71.4. Played a few games as sub as well, so again, the inbuilt value is already there. I think this is going to be a very good pick. Again, we know the pedigree of Jack Macrae. Obviously, we know he's obviously older. He's not going to be the 120 averaging player that we have seen in the past, but he's a forward, priced at 71. He hasn't gone to St Kilda just to be a forward. He's gone there to play midfield. St Kilda need, I think, another midfielder or two, which is what they've got. I think that as long as he's got that midfielder on the preseason, he'll be in my forward line next year. Jordox, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's another one that it's going to be hard to, not have. I mean, we're almost getting towards the territory of everyone's going to have the same forward line again. I mean, there's so many kind of no-brainers at the moment, I think, when the appeal of having not many good forwards was going to have a real diverse, different-looking forward lines. But, geez, if Macrae is anything near the Macrae of old at that price, he's an absolute he's a lock as well, I'd have to say. I mean, we still haven't heard anything on Brad Crouch, and I don't know where he's at with his career, if he's going to be playing
injuries.
next
the
year.
Injuries, unfortunately.
No, it's good. It's good for Macrae. He's too good a player to not be, finishing his career in the guts. The way he's made a career of the way he plays the game. It'll actually be interesting to see how he goes if Beveridge was onto something that, maybe the game was changing and didn't suit him anymore. So we'll get a good look at the Saints, and it's good. He's always been a favourite of mine, so it's good to see him get a fresh start. Yeah,
exactly. And even looking at his, again, fantasy history as well, obviously only averaged a 69.5 this year, and then the 91.8 in 2023. But again, if that's the average baseline, you're going to get of a 90. Being priced at 70, you got 20 points of upside straight up there if he can go at 90. But in every year from before 2022, he averaged over 98.8 in every year. And 98.8 was actually his only season where he went under 100. So we know that he's a fantasy scorer. As we said, though, again, he's not going to average 105, 110 points. We don't anticipate. But yeah, I think he's a very good pick in our forward lines and would be in my side if I had to do that now. And then the final player that we will discuss from the trade period that made the move, as we said, all the dominoes got fallen after the Bailey Smith deal got done. This is where we saw it was essentially like a four-way trade, how they all got this worked out. But the final player is Matt Kennedy making the move over to the Western Bulldogs. I'd imagine he probably goes straight into the sort of role that Jack Macrae was playing, where it's mostly forward with some sprinkling of CBAs, priced at 77.1, obviously with a couple of sub appearances there. Again, draft to bump him up as well. He's, I think, going to be in a better situation at least at Bulldogs. I can't see him being the sub, the fact they've traded for him. But with all the forward options we talked about, and there's also a couple we haven't talked about this year, it's a watch for me, but I don't know if he's going to get the role that is going to quite be there for Classic there. But what are your thoughts, Jordox? Because we know that he's got he can score.
We scored 7 tons this year and 3 90s. 7 tons, 3 90s. It's incredible. So yeah, it's the same. It's just the same as Macrae, Caleb Daniel. If the role's there, and he's not the sub, the guy scores. So again, he's going to be cheap. He's going to be cheaper than what his output could be, and he's got forward status. So it's just another one. Yeah. So we're going to have plenty to choose from. That's for sure. It'll just be how the summer looks, the preseason, and then who's the hot one leading into round 1.
Yeah, exactly. And again, he's just there's a heap of options that we got to consider in the forward line. Like Taze Philippou, if he's got forward status next year, it's going to be cheap. Riley Sanders potentially is going to be cheap. And at the Dogs, and with Smith and Macrae gone, that means Sanders is going to get more opportunity as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But Kenny definitely on the watch list. But because he's a little bit more expensive than a few options like we've talked about, obviously, he's more expensive than a Bailey Smith. He's more expensive than a Jack Macrae, Caleb Daniel, Luke Parker potential. Actually, Luke Parker will be around the sort of similar price range there. But it'll be interesting to see because we're not going to be able to fit them all in, I think, based on all these options we talked about in the forward line. But I think there's a few that have probably locked them in. It just depends who the other 1 or 2 players that we put into our team are. So, I believe that is all the trades that we've recapped. I don't believe that there are any done. Obviously, they're all got done very late, but I believe that is all of them. So I think that'll pretty much do us for
Yeah.
today. So we've had
not the biggest trade period in terms of AFL stars, but geez, from a fantasy perspective, there's a lot there to process and talk about. So I think the trade period was a success for fantasy fans, and it's really mixed things up, particularly with that forward line heading into 2025.
Yep, exactly right. So going to be definitely something to watch as the preseason unfolds. But that will do us today. Me and Johnson, I know for fact we could keep talking another hour or so about fantasy, but to keep it sort of to the point and concise, we'll leave it there. But that'll probably be the last. That'll be the last men's fantasy video that we do, at least until the game opens. Might do an episode when the game opens and sort of first reaction, stuff like that. But for at least the next sort of month and a half, 2 months until the game opens, that'll be it. But we're still doing, obviously, AFLW fantasy content there. So hopefully I can get myself a hat there. Currently ranked 213th, 130 points away, 3 rounds to go. I think it's gettable.
Come on, Bails.
Just over 40 points. But we'll see how we go. Hopefully I'm wearing that the first episode of the men's season. But Jordox, mate, thanks for jumping on the sort of first of the AFL Fantasy 2025 videos, mate. Where can the people find you across the socials, and anything planned over the next couple of months?
So I'm on X at Jordox 2020. Been pretty quiet. I'm still about, but I am just a bit more quiet at the moment. Looking forward to switching off at some point. But no, nothing planned next few months. Just, Christmas will be here before we know it. And then, who am I kidding? I'll be pumped for the fantasy season as soon as the new year kicks in. So, but no, it's been a good little break. Great to jump on today and have a chat. Like I said, plenty going on. So, that's it for me, and can't wait to see everyone and talk some more footy in the new year.
Yep, beautiful. And you can find me at Bails 20. Jesus, I've nearly said Bails 2020 then. I'll keep that in. I'll keep that in. So people might have a good laugh. People might have a good laugh at that one. No, you can find me at Bails DT. I can't believe, how did I get that wrong? I said every podcast. It's not like I've stopped. I keep going. I keep making pods every week. That's just how I roll.
It's catchy.
Yeah. Jordox 2020, and then Bails DT. You can find me, and you can find Tim at Tim Guest AU. Got that one right. I could have said Tim 2020, but no, it's Tim Guest AU there. But yeah, I'm off to the US next week, next Thursday, so that'll be good fun for 6 weeks. So the good thing is, I'll be there for 6 weeks. Back mid-December, BBL season's on, but then you'll get fantasy probably open, hopefully within a few weeks of me being back, and then give it a month or so, then we'll be right in the sort of preseason content and real stuck in. So it's going to be pretty quick for me, pretty good off season, which is good. So looking forward to that. But appreciate everyone that's tuned in to this episode. If you did enjoy it on YouTube, make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. So subscribe now so you're already sort of ready for next year as well, because there'll be plenty of content. Obviously, there's pretty much content daily there. So make sure you guys jump on for next season as well. And if you're listening back on the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. That'd be very much appreciated. It only takes a couple of seconds of your time, but does really help us out. So thank you very much to everyone that's done that so far. And again, if you are still doing AFLW Fantasy, make sure you keep tuning into our videos. We're doing our pre-lockout chat on the Friday at the normal time that we normally do it. So it'll be about 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time there. So make sure you guys tune to that. And then our round review will be out on the Tuesday like it normally is for the last couple of weeks of the season. So good luck for whoever's playing AFLW Fantasy for the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you get a hat or a car or whatever you're playing for. If you're not, enjoy the next couple of months off before we get the game open, and enjoy the break. And we'll chat to you guys in terms of the men's fantasy in a couple of months. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you guys then. We're out. See ya.
See ya.